There's a moment in a man's life that arrives without warning. No fanfare, no breakup, no dramatic exit. It slips in during the hush of midnight, when the house is still and the phone hasn't buzzed in hours. In that silence, something shifts. He isn't lonely, he's alone. And that distinction rewires everything. When a man spends enough time by himself, his perception of women transforms, not through bitterness or disillusionment, but through clarity. The fog of need lifts. He stops seeing women as mirrors for his worth, distractions from discomfort, or cures for inner emptiness. Instead, he sees them fully, layered, human, beautifully flawed, shaped by their own histories, fears, and longings. This isn't detachment. It's depth. Solitude becomes his teacher, silence his mirror. And in that space, he realizes something most never do. His earlier views were filtered through unmet needs. Now, grounded in self-sufficiency, he sees with patience, honesty, and calm. This isn't a story about rejecting connection. It's about what happens when a man stops running. From himself, from stillness, from truth. What emerges isn't coldness, but quiet strength. And if you've ever wondered why some men grow more selective, more centered, and more at peace with time, stay with me. Because what solitude reveals might just change how you see love, relationships, and yourself. Number 1, he stops seeking validation in her approval. There was a time when her smile felt like sunlight, necessary, warming, life-giving. A nod from her could lift his mood for days. A frown might send him spiraling into self-doubt. Back then, her opinion wasn't just important, it was defining. He'd bend his voice, soften his stance, even mute his passions, if it meant keeping her regard intact. But solitude changes that. When a man lives alone long enough, he begins to notice something unsettling. How much of his identity had been outsourced? His confidence wasn't rooted in his character or choices. It was tethered to whether someone else saw him as worthy. And that's a fragile foundation. Stoicism teaches that the only thing truly within our control is our own judgment and action. Everything else, another person's affection, their praise, even their presence, is external. The wise man doesn't stake his peace on what he cannot command. So, over months of quiet mornings and unobserved evenings, he practices this truth. He learns to sit with himself without flinching. He makes decisions not by asking, "Will she like this?" but, "Is this aligned with who I am becoming?" This shift isn't arrogance. It's integrity. He no longer needs her to tell him he's enough because he's proven it to himself. In the gym at 6 a.m., in the discipline of paying bills on time, in the courage to face his regrets without distraction. Validation, once craved like oxygen, becomes optional. And here's the paradox. When he stops needing her approval, he becomes more attractive. Not because he's playing games, but because he radiates inner stability. Women sense it. There's a calm in his eyes, a steadiness in his presence. He listens without performing. He disagrees without defensiveness. He's not trying to win. He's already at peace. This doesn't mean he becomes indifferent. On the contrary, he now engages from a place of genuine interest, not emotional hunger. He can admire her wit without needing her to adore his. He can enjoy her company without fearing her absence. That freedom allows for deeper, more honest connection. Because nothing is forced. Nothing is extracted. In the past, rejection would have shattered him. Now, he sees it as information, not indictment. If she walks away, he grieves. But he doesn't collapse. Because his worth was never hers to hold. So yes, solitude strips away the illusion that love is about being chosen. Instead, it reveals that real connection begins when two whole people choose each other, not out of lack, but out of abundance, and that changes everything. Number 2, he recognizes emotional labor and refuses to exploit it. Early in life, many men mistake a woman's emotional generosity for an endless resource. Her patience, her listening ear, her ability to soothe his storms. They seem like natural gifts, freely given, never depleting. He leans on her during crises, vents his frustrations, seeks comfort after failures, all while rarely asking how she is holding up. He assumes her strength is infinite because she hasn't yet broken under the weight. But time alone teaches him otherwise. In solitude, he becomes both student and subject of his own emotional world. Without someone to absorb his anxiety or reframe his setbacks, he must learn to regulate himself. He discovers how exhausting it is to manage not just his own inner chaos, but someone else's too. And that's when the realization hits. Women have been doing this invisible work for him, and for society, for generations. Stoic philosophy doesn't encourage emotional suppression, it champions mastery. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But that doesn't mean we should dump our imagined sufferings onto others. True resilience means facing your own storms, not dragging someone into them because you fear drowning alone. So now, when he meets a woman, he watches. Not with suspicion, but with awareness. He notices when she asks thoughtful questions, remembers small details, offers space for vulnerability. And instead of taking it as his due, he honors it as a gift, one that costs her something. He no longer expects her to be his therapist, his cheerleader, his emotional janitor. If he's struggling, he does the work first. Journaling, walking, reflecting, seeking professional help if needed. Only then does he share, not to offload, but to connect. This shift transforms his relationships. Conversations become reciprocal. He listens not just to respond, but to understand. He asks, "How are you really?" and waits for the truth, not the polite version. He notices when she's drained and gives her space without taking it personally. And if he senses she's giving more than she's receiving, if her energy is thin, her boundaries porous, he pulls back, not out of coldness, but respect. He won't participate in a dynamic that drains her light, even if it means walking away from potential intimacy. This isn't performative allyship, it's ethical maturity. He understands that love shouldn't cost someone their peace. A relationship built on one person's constant emotional labor isn't partnership, it's extraction. And after years of silence, he knows. Real connection thrives, not when one carries the other, but when both walk side by side, each carrying their own weight, each offering support by choice, not obligation. That kind of bond? It doesn't need drama to survive. It grows in quiet, mutual care. Number 3, he sees her as a whole person, not a role to fill. In his younger years, he often saw women through the lens of function. The girlfriend who made him feel desired, the wife who created stability, the confidant who offered comfort. Each relationship came with an unspoken script. Be this for me, and I'll stay. But solitude dismantles scripts. When a man lives alone long enough, he stops projecting roles onto women. He no longer scans a room wondering, could she be my savior, my muse, my escape? Instead, he sees her as she is, a complex human being with her own dreams, contradictions, traumas, and triumphs. She isn't there to complete him. She's already whole in her own right. Stoicism teaches that we distort reality when we impose our desires onto others. Epictetus warned against confusing people with the functions we assign them. A woman is not the one who makes me happy or the one who fixes my loneliness. She is simply herself, and that's enough. This clarity changes how he connects. He doesn't rush to label her girlfriend, partner, the one. He lets the relationship unfold without forcing it into a box. He's curious about her inner world, not just her opinions on him, but her views on art, justice, fear, joy. He wants to know what makes her laugh at 2 a.m., what she regrets, what she's fighting for. And because he's spent years sitting with his own complexity, he can hold space for hers. He doesn't flinch when she's angry, confused, or uncertain. He doesn't try to fix her mood or steer her back to the version of her he finds most comfortable. He accepts her full spectrum because he's learned to accept his own. This also means he respects her autonomy fiercely. If she chooses a path that doesn't include him, he doesn't frame it as betrayal. He understands that her life belongs to her, not to their connection, not to his hopes. That kind of respect is rare and powerful. Most importantly, he no longer fears her independence. In the past, a woman's self-sufficiency might have threatened him. Was she losing interest? Did he matter less? Now, he admires it. He knows that only someone secure in herself can offer genuine intimacy, not dependency disguised as love. So when he meets a woman now, he doesn't ask, "What can you give me?" He asks, "Who are you?" And if the answer unfolds slowly, beautifully, imperfectly, he's patient. Because he's no longer looking for a role to be filled, he's looking for a person to walk beside. And that, paradoxically, is where real closeness begins. Number 4, he understands that attraction without alignment is a trap. There was a time when chemistry alone could convince him. A glance, a laugh, the electric hum of mutual attraction, enough to override red flags, ignore misaligned values, or dismiss gut feelings whispering, "This won't last." He mistook intensity for compatibility, passion for purpose. But solitude teaches discernment. When a man lives alone long enough, he learns that attraction is just the doorway, not the house. It might draw you in, but it won't keep you warm through winter. Stoicism warns against being ruled by impressions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That includes the intoxicating rush of new desire. The wise man doesn't deny attraction. He questions its sustainability. Now, he looks beyond the surface. Does she honor her word? Does she take responsibility for her mistakes? Does she build or destroy when stressed? He's no longer seduced by charisma alone. He seeks character. Because he knows charm fades, but integrity endures. More importantly, he asks, do we move in the same direction? Not just in love, but in life. Do we value growth or comfort? Truth or peace at any cost? Inner peace or external validation? He's learned that 2 people can adore each other and still be walking toward different horizons. And that divergence always hurts more later than it does now. He also recognizes the danger of potential thinking, the belief that someone will change once they love him enough. Solitude has shown him how hard real change is. He's wrestled with his own patterns. He knows transformation requires willingness, not just affection. So he loves people as they are, not as he hopes they'll become. This doesn't make him cold. It makes him kind to both of them. By refusing to force a mismatched connection, he spares her the burden of pretending and himself the agony of slow erosion. He'd rather walk away clean than stay tangled in a bond that drains both souls. And when alignment is present, when values, vision, and emotional maturity converge, attraction becomes something deeper. It's not just fire. It's foundation. They don't just excite each other, they anchor each other. He's also learned that timing matters. 2 aligned people can still meet at the wrong season. Solitude has taught him patience. He won't rush what isn't ready. He'd rather wait for the right person in the right rhythm than force a symphony out of discordant notes. So yes, he still feels desire. But now, it's filtered through wisdom. He knows that the most dangerous relationships aren't the ones without spark. They're the ones with spark, but no substance. And after years of silence, he'd rather have quiet truth than loud illusion. Number 5. He no longer confuses loneliness with love. For years, he mistook proximity for connection. A warm body beside him in bed, a voice on the phone at night, someone to say good morning to. These felt like love. But in truth, they were just antidotes to loneliness. And that confusion led him into relationships that looked real but were built on emotional hunger, not genuine care. Solitude strips away that illusion. When a man lives alone long enough, he learns the difference between being lonely and being alone. Loneliness is a craving, an ache for external validation, distraction, or rescue. Aloneness, when embraced, becomes a sanctuary. In that space, he discovers that love cannot be summoned to fill a void. It must grow from fullness. Stoic philosophy is clear. Dependence on others for peace is a form of slavery. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from needing nothing outside yourself to be whole. That doesn't mean rejecting companionship. It means refusing to treat it as oxygen. The man who has faced his own silence knows he can survive without a partner. And because he can, he chooses one only when it adds to his life, not when it's required to sustain it. This changes everything. He no longer rushes into relationships out of fear. Fear of aging alone, of missing out, of being left behind. He doesn't cling to fading connections just because the alternative feels empty. Instead, he waits, not passively, but actively, building a life so rich that companionship becomes a celebration, not a crutch. He also recognizes the subtle signs of loneliness masquerading as love. The urge to text just to feel seen, the desperation to plan dates to avoid quiet evenings, the tendency to overlook incompatibilities because at least someone is here. Now, he names those impulses for what they are. Not love, but avoidance. And when he meets someone new, he asks himself honestly, am I drawn to her essence, or just the relief she offers from my solitude? If the answer leans toward the latter, he steps back. He'd rather sit with discomfort than build a future on shaky ground. This discipline isn't cold, it's compassionate. For her, because she deserves someone who chooses her from abundance, not scarcity. For himself, because he knows that relationships born from lack eventually demand payment. In resentment, in compromise of values, in slow emotional bankruptcy. Moreover, he's learned that true intimacy requires two people who are comfortable in their own skin. You can't merge deeply with another if you're still running from yourself. Solitude has done the work of integration. He's made peace with his shadows, his silences, his unmet childhood needs. So now, when he connects, it's not to escape himself, but to share himself. That's the gift of aloneness. It turns love from a rescue mission into a mutual offering. And after years of learning to stand alone, he finally knows. Love should expand your world, not save it. Number 6, he chooses connection over control. In his earlier years, he often approached relationships like a project to manage. He'd subtly steer conversations, curate experiences, even shape her choices, all in the name of making things work. Beneath it was a quiet fear. If he didn't hold the reins, everything might fall apart. Love to him meant influence, sometimes gentle, sometimes not. over another person's path. But solitude dismantles the illusion of control. When a man lives alone long enough, he confronts the raw truth. He cannot control even his own mind perfectly, let alone another human being. Stoicism teaches that the only true sovereignty lies in mastering one's judgments and actions, not in bending others to your will. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. That includes the thoughts, feelings, and decisions of the woman you love." Now, he approaches connection with humility. He doesn't try to fix her worldview or nudge her toward his version of happiness. He respects her agency, even when it leads her away from him. Because he knows, love that demands conformity isn't love. It's possession disguised as care. This shift transforms intimacy. Instead of seeking predictability, he embraces mystery. He doesn't need to know every thought before she speaks it. He's curious, not anxious. He listens without preparing his rebuttal. He allows space for her to evolve, even if that evolution reshapes their relationship. He also stops keeping score. No more mental ledgers of who gave more, who compromised less, who owes what. Solitude has shown him that transactional thinking kills tenderness. Real connection flows from generosity, not calculation. He gives because he chooses to, not because he expects return. And when conflict arises, he doesn't weaponize silence or manipulate through guilt. He communicates clearly, calmly, without drama. Why? Because he spent years sitting with his own discomfort without needing to offload it onto someone else. He knows that peace isn't the absence of tension, it's the presence of integrity. Most profoundly, he no longer sees vulnerability as weakness to be managed, but as courage to be honored. When she shares her fears, he doesn't rush to reassure or solve. He simply says, "I'm here." And he means it, not as a promise to fix, but as an offering of presence. This is the paradox of mature love. The less you try to control it, the deeper it grows. Because trust flourishes only in freedom. So now, if she stays, it's not because he convinced her, but because she chose to. And if she leaves, it's not a failure of his strategy, but a testament to her autonomy. Either way, he remains grounded, because after years of silence, he's learned. Love isn't about holding on tightly. It's about opening your hands and still feeling full. Conclusion. So what happens when a man lives alone long enough? He doesn't become hardened, he becomes honest. He stops seeing women through the distorted lens of need, projection, or fantasy. Instead, he sees them as they are, complex, capable, and complete. And in that clarity, he finds something rare, the ability to love without losing himself, and to be loved without demanding ownership. This isn't about rejecting relationships. It's about redefining them, from transactions of validation to partnerships of mutual respect, from emotional dependency to conscious choice, from control to trust. Stoicism doesn't teach detachment, it teaches discernment. And solitude is its quiet classroom. In that space, a man learns that his peace was never outside him. It was always within, waiting to be claimed. And once he claims it, everything changes. He no longer seeks a woman to complete him. He offers himself, whole, grounded, and free, to walk beside someone who is equally whole. That's not loneliness. That's liberation. If this resonated with you, hit like, drop a comment below. What shifted for you after time alone? Subscribe for more on Stoic wisdom, modern masculinity, and building relationships that last. And remember, the most powerful love story begins not with us, but with me.